This is an interview with Mr. Robert Smith for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley. We're at Miles College, November 8th, 1995. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and talk with us today.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
I'd just like to ask you some sort of background questions. Tell me, were you born here in Birmingham?
Yes, I was born here in Birmingham in the Collegeville area, and I attended school here. Started at Hudson Elementary in Collegeville area, and I lived in Ohio for a little while, and I came back and attended Our Lady of Fatima on the south side, and then...
Were your parents from Birmingham?
Yes, my parents lived here in Birmingham, mother and father.
Where did they go to school? High school?
I think they went to Parker.
To Parker High.
I think so.
Most of us went to Parker High. Particularly that lived in town, as we would call it.
That's correct.
How many brothers and sisters did you
It was 8 of us.
8 of you.
Mm-hmm.
And
6 boys and 2 girls.
Where did you fit in that?
I was the last one.
You was the baby.
The baby.
The spoiled one.
Yeah, the one that's spoiled.
Yeah. Your education. Now, where did you start first grade?
Okay, I started first grade in Hudson Elementary.
And what do you remember about Hudson?
I remember walking down the railroad tracks, going to Hudson Elementary every morning. That was most memorable to me. And also the fact that when it would rain, how the gym floor would rise up, and we couldn't play basketball on those days.
So those are the things that stuck in your mind from elementary school.
That's correct.
And from Hudson, did you go to Our Lady of Fatima?
Okay, from Hudson, I went to the 6th grade. Then I attended the 6th grade in Ohio at St. Philip Neri in Cleveland. And I stayed there until the 8th grade. On the 8th grade, I came back to Birmingham and attended Our Lady of Fatima. During that period of time, my parents were sick, so I went to stay with my sister in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay. How did you like the transition from Birmingham to Cleveland?
Well, Cleveland was a lot different from what I had been exposed to here in the South, in the sense that there were a lot of interracials, location, living in housing areas and communicating with each other and going to school with each other and playing with each other. It really wasn't a whole lot of problem. It was kind of different for me because I had always been accustomed to not being the norm.
What was it like then growing up in Birmingham then in a segregated society versus the integrated society of Cleveland, Ohio?
I think it was very restraintful in a sense that we didn't get a overall view of the different cultures that existed and what each had to offer. So consequently, we lived in our own little shell and not knowing what the outside was, whereas in the northern area where I was, it was like open. I mean, stay next door to whites and wasn't any problem. Went to school with them, wasn't no problem.
What were the most serious problems that you encountered with segregation growing up as a child?
Some of the most serious problems that I found with segregation growing up as a child was the lack of being recognized for what you have to offer. Being black kind of automatically set you back. And it was hard to come up front unless you was an overachiever.
What do you mean, come up front, I'll set you back?
Well, set you back mean you really wasn't recognized much in those categories. And you didn't really get any recognition unless you was a O.J. Simpson or Emmett Smith or some kind of celebrity or somebody that overexcelled.
Were there those individuals, are you suggesting then that you're not, you didn't get recognition by anyone or by white society or by black society? Or?
Okay, when I'm speaking of recognition, I mean just basically just normal communication, not necessarily for for your value that you offer, but just your normal communication link. If I was, being that I was black, things I had to say did not have a great interest, because it was appeared that, that the interest had to be coming from the majority, and didn't have much input, is what I'm saying.
You're basically suggesting then that we were sort of in a cocoon, black folk were in a cocoon that really did not matter where the wider society
Exactly.
is. After you left Al-Laida Fatima, then what school did you attend?
Okay, I left Al-Laida Fatima and we went to Immaculata, which was the predominantly black parochial high school. There was only two, Immaculata and Holy Family. And I normally went to Immaculata, and I went to Immaculata from the ninth and the 10th grade, where I participated in sports, particularly basketball.
Tell me about Immaculata. What do you remember about Immaculata?
I most remember about Immaculata was the togetherness that existed at the school among the student body, among the teachers, the laymen, as well as the nuns and the priests. I remember the concentration on education and achieving, and it was just a together.
Yeah, looking out from outside, looking into Immaculata, what we looked at was, we thought there was a lot of discipline there. Was that true?
I would say yes. I several times had my head hit, physically, but I probably needed it. And I'm sort of a believer of discipline, not harsh discipline, but just discipline in general, in trying to achieve either, whether it be learning or just plain just living.
Another thing that we saw from the outside is that you had white teachers at Immaculata. Is that correct?
We had white and black teachers. We had white lay teachers. What we call lay teachers was those that were not affiliated with any order. They weren't nuns or priests. And we had black teachers too, black lay teachers. At that time, we had no black clergy people or black nuns.
Okay. Yeah, and that was very strange for Birmingham to see that there were white teachers in a black school.
That's correct.
But that was something that was accepted. And obviously it was somewhat of a mystery to us that went to Winona or went to Parker, any of the other schools. At Immaculata, you were really developing foundation for what you would do later on. What do you remember about your course of study at Immaculata to prepare you for where you would go from there?
Well, Immaculata, in my opinion, had a very good curricula that they was working with study, trying to improve your study habits, helping you if you were a little slow, testing you to ensure that that they did instill learning, resting and playing and recreational, which was all a combination. And I felt I had a great background from Immaculata.
At Immaculata, you were probably at Immaculata during the 63 demonstrations?
That's correct.
Were you actively involved in those demonstrations?
Yes, I was.
What was it like to be involved in a march or a demonstration?
Well, it was interesting to me because everybody was doing it. It was fun to see Bull Connor riding down 2nd Avenue in that tank. And it was fun seeing everybody around downtown and not spending money, but yet they were together and were happy. It was also kind of tragic to see the fire hoses, which at one time my mother would meet me downtown, which is now, would meet me where the Civil Rights Institute is now located. There used to be some apartments right there. So I would ride the bus to that location, 6th Avenue. We would walk from 6th Avenue, and she would meet me there from Immaculata. And I can remember one time I got caught in the crowd with the fire hoses, which was at Booker T. Washington's old college right there on the corner, when I was trying to get across the street to where those apartments were. And It was a time when people were really together, and it was a common cause, a common goal, and it wasn't any violence that I saw when I was there, and there wasn't any vandalism that I was seeing. It was just really just a movement.
In many cases, when the demonstration started between April and May of '63, particularly the first few days of May of 1963, students would go to class, and people would come from the movement to entice them to get involved in the struggle. Did that happen at Immaculata?
Yes, we did have people trying to get us to participate, but it really wasn't that difficult because most people wanted to participate. And the only thing we had to really worry about was whether our parents would accept it or not.
Did your parents accept?
They did.
That they allowed you to participate in the demonstrations?
Yes.
Did you leave home going to the demonstrations, or did you leave home going to school and then left school and went to the demonstrations?
I left home going to school. After school, then I participated.
Oh, you mean after school is out?
Yes.
Okay, so you were not one of those that left during the day?
No.
Did any students from Immaculata?
Not to my knowledge. I think they had that real lock and key, because once you got in, and we were kind of locked in school. You couldn't just wander in and out like some schools are now, and couldn't nobody come in and you couldn't go out. So it was very difficult to get off the premises. Did
you attend mass meetings of the movement at night at some of the churches?
Sometimes at the church, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Bethel's Church, I have attended some meetings there on the Reverend Shuttleworth when he was the pastor over there.
Yeah. What do you remember? I know you were a young person at the time, and attending those meetings probably was somewhat different than for the adult. But what was it like being a young teenager, probably, at the time?
Well, a lot of it I really didn't thoroughly understand, but it was the meetings were very aggressive meetings. The meetings were peaceful meetings, and the meetings were trying to get people to be motivated to help in the cause.
In being in those meetings, did they influence your participation later on in the movement at all?
Yes, had a good influence on me.
Were you a member of Our Lady of Fatima at the time, or were you a member of Bethel or another?
Okay,
church?
my parents they went to Bethel Church, and I was a Catholic, so I was Our Lady of Fatima. I was a Catholic at that time.
Okay, but your parents went to Bethel.
That's correct.
Okay. By the way, we're talking about your parents. You say your parents went to Parker. Did they go on to college?
No.
Okay.
No.
What kind of work did they do?
My mother ended up being a beautician, and she ran her own business down in Collegeville. And my dad was working for one of the steel plants, and then he later started working for the Pullman service when they had the old terminal station.
Right, right. After you left Our Lady of Fatima, where did you go?
I went to Lady of Fatima for 2 years, and then we went to John Carroll over on Highland Avenue.
That's another Catholic school.
It's another parochial, predominantly white, or at that time all white.
All white, right.
All white parochial school. And supposedly it was something that had gotten together between Father Farrell at Our Lady of Fatima and Monsignor Houck at John Carroll to spearhead the integration, or be the leader, or one of the leaders in speaking out on integration. So we were sent, and I said we, it was 4 of us sent to John Carroll to integrate.
Who were the other individuals that
the other individual was Madeline Humphrey, who is now a lawyer in Virginia. She was in the 11th grade with me. Fred Tyson and Gracie Allen, they were in the 10th grade. So it was 4 of us all together.
Were those 4 individuals selected and actually picked to go as a result of their grades?
Well, I was told the selection process entailed several factors. 1, they had to be Catholic. 2, the average had to be somewhat above or somewhat above average, and 3 supposedly peace-going people. I mean, to me, those are the criteria that I was given.
What do you remember about the first day?
The first day was real scary. Going on Highland Avenue, if you know anything about Highland Avenue, most of the kids up there were kind of rich. They had their own cars and stuff like that. And I don't remember whether the buses did go in that general vicinity. And I remember the first day we going with the policeman being there with us when we first went to class the first day. They was around there for about the week. Then they kind of thinned it out.
Do you remember the day before or the night before, the morning of the first day going in, and how your family were acting and reacting at that particular time?
Well, it was real scary. We had threats at our home. People calling our house some kind of way. They got our telephone number and calling our house and saying things like, and I can still remember these words because I answered the phone, nigga, you won't live to see tomorrow, this, that, and the other. And we then at that point got very scared and abandoned the house and prepared for someone coming up there, maybe throwing a bomb or what have you.
Oh, you did abandon the house? You left the house?
Yeah, but we left the house into our yard.
I see.
Waiting, because and then where we lived at that time was the airport, which very few whites were in, and we just kind of circulated in the neighborhood. If whites came in that area late at night, don't let them out. You know, for fear that something might go down, but nothing ever happened. The most we ever got was just name calling during class sessions and maybe 1 or 2 little fights.
The first week then, you said that police were on hand.
That's correct.
How long did that last?
I would say no longer than a week.
Were these city policemen, or do you have any idea?
I'm trying to think where they were now. I kind of think they were state troopers or somebody like that. They were uniformed. They were uniformed people.
So after a week or so, then they disappeared.
Yes.
And you were basically on your own.
That's correct.
What was that like to be there? Were you the only black child in your class?
Madeline was the only one. We were in the same grade level, but John Carroll was so large, we didn't necessarily take the same classes together.
Right.
Sometimes we would have classes together, and sometimes we'd be separated. And then we would all go to the cafeteria, and nobody would never sit with us while we eat. But we would always eat together ourselves anyway. And I guess some of the real problems we had, I guess, was name calling, and we didn't have much social life. You know, didn't have any of that. We couldn't play in any sports. No contact sports could be what we could play.
What about other activities, other school activities, non-athletic?
We weren't invited to any of that.
So you basically went to school at John Carroll.
That's correct.
But nothing else.
And that's it.
What did you have any support group within the school? Teachers or other students or the principal, other than outside of the 4 of you? What other kinds?
Well, you had some people there that would mingle with you, you know.
Other students?
Yes. They would mingle with you, and but then they would get ridiculed by some of their peer group if they did. Some of those people I still know, and some of them in Birmingham I still go see, and we communicate. What
year was this?
This was in 1964.
1964. So it's right after the demonstrations, after the bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church.
That's correct.
By the way, do you remember the bombing of the church?
Yes, I do remember. My mother, I was driving during that time, and I can remember my mother and father, we would go downtown sometime, and it used to be a cleaners about 2 blocks down from there where we used to put our cleaners at.
Down from
the 6th Avenue Church. And so happened that morning when it occurred, I mean, we were at the cleaners. And I have never heard a sound so loud and the impact and people. I panicked. I didn't know what was going on, and all I could tell my parents was, we need to just leave. Then people started running down the street saying somebody's bombed the church and things of that nature.
Just pandemonium broke.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you at that time, were you the only child at home?
I did have another brother at home at that time, Thomas Smith. He was still there.
How did that affect how your parents allowed you to go out into the city?
Well, they was very protective. We didn't travel alone. When we were living in the area, like when we lived over in Cotton Mill Quarter, out there where we call it Cosville, but it was right outside of Cosville, what they call Cotton Mill Quarter, the buses wouldn't stop no far in Norwood. So we would have to walk from that point.
And how far was that?
It was about maybe a mile.
Mm-hmm. So that's where you would catch the bus to go to school from there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. As you look back on your experience at John Carroll, what stands out in your mind more than anything else?
Well, John Carroll to me had some negative and positives. And I don't even try to weigh out whether it was more positive than negative, but it was a combination of both. As far as social, it was negative for me. But as far as educational, I think it was positive. Well, I guess a lot of that was due to the background I had already acquired through Immaculata in Our Lady of Fatima prior to going to John Carroll, because I went in 11th grade already. So all my basic fundamentals of learning had already taken place. But John Carroll was positive in the sense I got a chance to learn the different people. I got to learn them like they learned me. And which I guess today makes me a lot more comfortable with them, I guess because of the exposure.
Did your experience have any negative impact on the way that you view white people?
Well, in my senior year, being that I was not able to play basketball my junior nor senior year, and at that time that was my quest in life. That was real heartbreaking to me, and I had a lot of malice in my heart for that. And I chose to send my college application to only black schools.
What did they actually tell you? Why could you not play?
Well, the first year, my junior year, they said that it was you were just getting started, and we better not push the issue too much, but we maybe be able to play you next year. It wasn't due to I think I had the talent to play because I was playing from Immaculata. But then my senior year when I got there and I started practicing with the team, then Monsignor told me and said, well, look, we won't be able to play you. We've checked some other schools and they won't play any contact sports with you playing. So I don't think you'll be able to play.
Were there ever any questions raised by your parents or anyone else, or did you always just basically handle that yourself?
I just basically just handled it.
Then you left your senior year, you applied for college.
Right.
What schools did you apply to?
I made one application to Tuskegee.
That was it?
That was it.
And you were accepted into Tuskegee?
I was accepted.
What was the transition like from high school at John Carroll, which was a predominantly white high school, to Tuskegee, which is an all-black institution? What was that transition like? Well,
the transition was good. One thing that was real positive about John Carroll is because I really had never thought about going to college. Till my counselor asked me one day, he said, well, look, where you going to go to college at? And I said, well, I ain't never thought about it because my parents ain't got no money. And he said, well, you still need to apply. So that was one reason that got me in college, I guess, going to Tuskegee, and then I got on scholarship, which helped the matters. When I went to Tuskegee, the courses that I was taking there, I didn't find real difficult. I guess maybe because they had already drilled a lot of learning habits in us already, and I guess my only thing I needed to do was stay disciplined from being away from home. And but as far as the transition, a lot of the things that were taking place at Tuskegee, I had already acquired the background or the know-how to kind of work with it from John Carroll, so that I could make my acquiring the knowledge at Tuskegee a lot easier.
So the social transition was, the educational transition was relatively simple. What about the social transition? Social
transition was great. To me, I was like alive again now, from coming from a cocoon, like you had said, to now you're in an environment where, you got people you can relate to, you can talk to, you can eat with, It was like a whole different environment then.
Tuskegee had gone through some trying times itself in that period between 1960 and 1965. Were there any residue of that activism at Tuskegee when you were there?
Yes, it was. It was a lot of the Muslim that was going on in there. A lot of Muslim organizations and some friends of mine that I knew. And at that time, the Muslim movement was kind of vague to us. I had come from John Carroll, not knowing anything was going on, to Tuskegee, where getting a little less exposure, and even in the black community, they were looked down upon as being something that was wrong. So
you mean the Muslims?
Muslim, right? So you really kind of stayed off from that too, because the media kind of publicized communists and all this, and to us, communism was a bad word, and consequently, we kind of, just kind of stayed separate. But they were actively on the campus.
What about other organizations such as SNCC?
SNCC was active. SNCC was active on the campus.
Yeah. Were you actively involved in any of those organizations?
No, I wasn't.
You basically was there for the education, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at this with hindsight, your education from, let's just say from 10th grade on, if you had the opportunity, let's say 9th grade, to change any of that, what would you change?
Well, would the time still be the same?
Timing
would still be the 60s and...
time would be basically the same, yes.
I don't think anything else I could change on it based on the time. I think John Carroll took a leadership role in trying to bring about some kind of equality or give an expression to it. Immaculata was a great school. I don't know anything. What else I could do to change it?
Yeah. So if you had the opportunity to go back, you would pursue the same route that you pursued at this particular point.
Provided I was in Birmingham and I was in the South and it was doing the same time. If it had been something different, a different location, a different time, then I would have promoted interracial school systems, primarily because there are things which we are in our cocoon because a lot of times we don't understand the outside. But if you get to be able to express yourself to other people and they express themselves, then you both got a learning process. In Ohio, that's how it was.
Right. If you had the opportunity and you could go back, looking at the movement, what would you do different, or would there be anything that you would do different in terms of your involvement? And we're talking about as a high school student now.
I think I would have participated much stronger. I think the movement was good. I think if it had been linked up with a lot of other organizations at that time and collectively came in as one, it would have been even a far greater impact.
Other organizations
like H. Rap Brown, his organization, SNCC workers, the Muslims. Some of those still was kind of separated from what we call the peaceful movement.
Right.
Those were the radical movement, and then we had the peaceful movement. I think really it takes a little of both to make something happen. It takes a little peacefulness and it takes a little radicalness too, to show that, to be emphatic about what you want done. And I think those coupled together if they could have worked hand in hand, could have, I think, even made it better today.
Is there anything that we have not discussed that you would like to just say to the audience today in relationship to your growing up in Birmingham and how the movement proceeded and how you, in fact, received your education by traversing all of the difficulties of Birmingham, Alabama?
Well, I think one thing that I have an advantage is the sense that I've had a lot of good exposure. I've lived in the North. I've mostly lived in the South. I went to predominantly black schools. I went to predominantly white schools, both in the secondary level and as well as higher education, college level and advanced levels. Right. What it has done for me is made me a lot versatile with trying to communicate with the other races. And I think a lot of times when we're not exposed, we have a tendency to be standoffish and not being able to communicate, which I think is what has hindered Birmingham a lot, primarily because we do not have that great communication link between the blacks and the white. Everything is black and everything is white. If you go black, if you're going to vote black and you black, then I'm white, I'm going to vote white, and which is not the case, which should not be the case. It should be the views and the issues at hand. And until we eliminate that, you're going to always have black stand here, white stand here, which ain't no problem. I don't have any problem with that, And it's not that I think blacks want to be in their communities. It's just that we want to have the same kind of resources and learning aids that they have, because I think we have something to offer too in society. And it takes us, number one, being able to communicate that to them in a way which they can understand. And it takes two, them being able to accept that and work with it.
In conclusion, you also did graduate study at Sanford University.
Right. I received my master's degree in business administration from Sanford in 1975. Okay. And I was commissioned officer from Tuskegee. That helped me too with being, I got friends now, black and white, and I stay next door to whites, but I live in a black community, and they kids come over my house. If we can begin to work together and look at each other for what we have to offer, then I think that'll begin to bridge the gap of the economic development in downtown Birmingham and also in the city and also in the state.
You are a businessman that's doing business in Birmingham. You have a business downtown Birmingham.
Yes.
So you seem to be one of those that are committed.
Oh, yes. I'm very much committed to Birmingham. Sometimes it's kind of hard, but you just can't just abandon the ship. I'm committed to Birmingham activities. I'm committed to the social economics. I'm committed to Afro-Americans, and it's going to be hard for me to deviate from that.
Right. Mr. Smith, I want to thank you for taking your time out, coming and talk with us today. You've been very helpful, and we will be seeing you very soon in relationship to what we're doing here.
I appreciate it very much, Dr. Hunt.
Thank you very much. Well,